Welcome back to the Bears Talk Ireland podcast as we continue to talk Chicago Bears and everything going on in the offseason so far. I mean, the Bears are back yesterday, so they're only in a couple of days, but already today we have some players out for press conferences. Not a huge amount to talk about, but still the odd comment that we could have a little dive into and see what we think. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Adam Studzinski, who is a producer at 670 The Score and also on the Take the North podcast with Dan Reeder and Mark Rohde, who's joined me to just talk a little bit Bears off season. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate the time. Appreciate you having Dan on earlier. And I know we appreciated having you on both The Score and Take the North in the last year. So it's good to catch up, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been great to kind of go back and forth. I mean, just for myself, getting to talk to you guys who are in the thick of it there in Chicago, and it's great for me. And again, really appreciate all the kind of the support you guys have given me. But Adam, when we look at the off season, I'll kind of dive into it here. We won't go too far into new players and this and that, 'cause I think it's been done to death. But just as a whole, when you look at the Bears, the moves in terms of coaching staffs, players, I mean, how do you kind of view this offseason so far? Are you happy with the way the Bears have gone about it? Do you think their aggressiveness has been something that's been really needed, or what do you think has been done so far, basically?
I gotta say, I've been thrilled by so much of what this team has done since the end of what was a really, really disappointing 2024 season. And I'll just briefly touch on a few things, I guess. When it comes to Ben Johnson, I mean, what appears to be a home run hire so far. He hasn't coached a game yet, so we'll see how that goes. But what was so cool about Ben Johnson coming to the Bears, and really he chose the Bears, right? And this was the hottest coaching candidate for the last 2 years, really. And he's been really open about the fact that he wanted to be in Chicago. Like this was his most desired spot. He made that clear through his agent, through his interviews now. Like he really wanted to be here to work with Caleb Williams and to lead this team. And I kind of compare it to, as I thought about it more, because obviously a lot of Bears fans loved the idea of Ben Johnson. It's kind of like when you're really into a girl and you find out that she's into you too. And that's just a really good feeling, and everyone can go forward from there. So I thought that was just a really good moment. That. Oh yeah, well, hey, it's the fact that it's rare, right? It's rare. Like it doesn't happen that often, and it's a great feeling when it happens. So, but that to start off this offseason was just so great. And then for them to move forward with what I think has been a really deliberate vision of how they want to build the team, whether it's the offensive linemen that they added, the defensive linemen that they've added, the way that they've been so intentional about what they want to do, even a couple of the receivers that they added. They've been so intentional. I think that's the biggest thing that Ben Johnson has brought so far to the organization and to Ryan Poles as they put this thing all together is they have a clear vision about what they want to do. And I think that that's really exciting and something that this team has been missing for quite a while now. They just haven't had clear vision. And as much as I have liked some of the things that Ryan Poles has done, he's missed on some things. And it never really felt like the vision was fully there. And now I think they have that. And I think that's really exciting.
Absolutely. I hope my wife doesn't listen or I'll be in trouble for that joke later on. I'm only joking,
That's all right.
Of course.
That's all right. All right. It's just between us.
Actually, absolutely. You mentioned Ryan Poles, and obviously, I mean, one thing that Ryan Poles was talked about a lot in the past was, he's an O-lineman. He'll come in, he'll fix that O-line fairly quickly. And it didn't work over the last couple of years, obviously, the way people had hoped. Now, you mentioned the moves he's made there now, obviously, Jonah Jackson and Tooney, and then you look at Drew Dolman as a center. I mean, how big a change is that O-line? Has the moves made on this O-line this offseason? I mean, did you think that they could pretty much turn it around as much as they have done in such a short space of time?
That's interesting because I think there was a lot of conversation after the season ended about obviously the offensive line and can they fix the offensive line and add pieces on the defensive line all in one offseason. And we hadn't really considered the idea of trading for players and specifically for offensive linemen, because so it's not very often that good offensive linemen get traded. And it's also obviously rare that good offensive linemen hit free agency. So that's why it's hard to find these guys. But the Bears were able to, through trades for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, immediately upgrade their offensive line, which is something that I think that idea of like, hey, maybe they can trade for somebody that is ready to play now. I don't think we'd necessarily consider that. Now, you don't know quite, I guess, what you're going to get in Jonah Jackson. We don't know how much Joe Thuney has left in the tank, even though his play last year would tell you he's still got quite a bit left in the tank. And, I know he struggled at left tackle in the Super Bowl, but he's not a left tackle. He's a left guard. So I think that, and then the combination of, okay, they went and they got the best center on the market in free agency. They made that move on day one of free agency. And it shows that, like, they were somehow able to upgrade all of this almost immediately. Now, I mean, the job's not done. You need to add depth. A guy that I was hoping they would bring back just signed with a different team, and I just blanked on his name, but he played for the team last year. I'll get it in a second. And he would have been a depth piece anyway. You still have questions about left tackle. So, I mean, the job's not done up front. And then defensively, for them to be able to add a guy like Dio Dembo, I think is going to be, a rising star. But even he, like, they're not done because he's a good piece. He's probably not a star, and maybe he is, maybe he develops into that. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But yeah, the thought of, can they fix all this in one offseason was kind of I don't know if they can. Ben Johnson, I will say, just to wrap this up real quick, I don't want to ramble too much. Ben Johnson did say before free agency started that he believed they could, add 3 pieces up front, specifically on the offensive line. And he pointed to what the Panthers did in the last offseason in some of the players that they added, including guard Robert Hunt that they signed to a big contract. So he believed they could do it, and they proved that they could do it. Now, again, they need more depth. The job isn't done up front, but that doesn't mean that what they have done so far has not been really impressive, and I think has in a way blown away some of the expectations that we thought they could get to this offseason as far as the additions they could make, and raised expectations for this next season simultaneously.
Actually, you jumped into my next question with your last line there, and it was in terms of, obviously they finished bottom of the division last year. There's a bit of a negativity going around. They finished with a win against Green Bay, which is nice, but the season as a whole has that kind of negativity. People like myself have gone into the offseason saying, right, I'm not getting too far ahead of myself again. I'm not letting myself go ahead. But then you see the moves they've made. As you say, they seem to have filled a lot of holes. They haven't fixed everything. They're not a finished piece, but they fixed holes. Have they just gone and ramped up that expectation a little bit again by these moves? Does that put a little bit of pressure on? Now, we know it's forced your head coach and coaches, but still, is there a little bit of pressure on Ryan Poles, even though he's going to be here a bit longer? I think that his contract was sorted. But is there going to be a bit of pressure on Ryan Poles now going forward that obviously won't be on the coaching staff, who will get that little bit of extra time?
I think, so specifically with Ryan Poles, I think there is a little bit of pressure on him. The reality is, as much as you can for certain excuse the record in his first season here when they tore everything down, and they won't ever admit it, but they were trying to lose that season. And talking specifically about the 2022 season, where they ended up with the first overall pick, not via trade. They were just the worst team in the NFL. And so, but the reality is that record does go on his personal record as the general manager of the Chicago Bears. His second year, they improved, but they still had a losing record. Obviously, this last year, they only had 5 wins. So his record as general manager is poor. And I think that he needs to have a winning season to show that he knows, to gain more confidence with the rest, with, I guess I should say, with the fan base and with the media, that he knows what he's doing and that this is going somewhere. And yeah, you were able to get Ben Johnson. You were able to make these moves that look like winning moves, but is that going to translate to winning on the field? So I think that, yeah, he could definitely be on the hot seat if the team still struggles this year and doesn't, like, I don't know, probably I'll just say gets to at least 9 wins. Then there's going to be a lot of talk about, hey, is this good enough? I don't know if 8 wins is good enough. It depends on what it looks like. Depends on who they lose to. So yeah, I think there is some pressure on Ryan Poles to get this right, and there's still some dispute though about how long his contract is. The most notable person on this who I trust the most is Brad Biggs, who's Bears reporter for the Chicago Tribune here. He's the most trustworthy Bears reporter to me, and he said he believes that Ryan Poles is under contract through 2026. Now, does that mean the Bears are for sure keeping him through that time? Again, it depends on how much winning they do in 2025. But he also, just to be clear, Biggs isn't sure if that extra year is there. He isn't sure if that was originally there or if they gave him a secret extension at some point. So there's, and I know, man, like the Bears are so secretive about their contracts for their coaches and their general manager, and it's frustrating, but we deal with the small pieces of information we can get.
Yeah, absolutely. They do tend to keep things very well locked in house when they need to. And I remember that Ryan Poles contract kind of conversation. You were getting different dates and different years, and everybody was trying to figure it out. And you'll probably never know unless he gets an extension. But again, yeah, I think it is interesting because I do like a lot of what he's done. But I'm with you. Like, technically, his record is not very good. He's had a number of losing seasons, but not just losing seasons, terrible runs within those, like 10-game run losses and stuff like that, which really stands out. So I think this is an important year for him. When we look at the roster as a whole now, I mean, what holes stand out to you? I know you still need to get offensive linemen in here. There's questions about left tackle and Braxton Jones, and will they do anything in the draft? Again, defensive line, still you would think you have players to come in. Then you have other positions like, say, safety, for example. I mean, after this year, there's going to be question marks there. We know Brisker's had issues with concussions and his contract is coming up. Kevin Byard is getting older now. Will there be questions there? Linebacker is bringing up some very interesting questions. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, do they concentrate on those after this season and kind of work on this season now? Or are those positions that you think in this draft they're going to have to start kind of bringing players in to get them ready maybe for the end of this season?
So I think that as far as holes on the roster, and by the way, the offensive lineman I was trying to think of a few minutes ago, Matt Pryor. I was hoping the Bears are going to be able to bring him back on a low contract, but they didn't. So that's fine. I wanted to clear that up because that was bugging me. Anyway, as far as holes on the current roster, so I guess I'll say there are a lot of these I think they need to be working on in this draft. And so I think it's hard to say what their biggest hole is right now because they filled so much of their deficiencies on the interior of the offensive line. You can say they have a hole at left tackle. It depends on how you feel about Braxton Jones. I know a lot of talk in Chicago has been about the running back position. I am one that believes they need a more pure 3-down running back to be added in this draft. I'm sure we'll talk about Ashton Jeanty at some point, so I'll leave that for later. I like DeAndre Swift, but I think they need more there. The running back room as it is right now is just kind of meh. So then you have depth on the offensive line. We all know every offensive lineman is going to play for the most part. It's rare that you get 5 guys that play every single game. So you need good offensive line depth. So they still need to add that. And I think they need to do that in the draft. Defensive line, I think they're fine as far as their starters. They still need more depth there. I do think that safety for sure is not currently a hole, but something they need to add to. And, up top on paper, you've got Kevin Byard, who had a fine year last year. Jaquan Brisker, you mentioned, has had concussion issues. You just unfortunately can't count on Brisker playing every game. You just can't. You have to be prepared for not just this year. And I think they have their immediate depth is going to be Jonathan Owens again. He's fine. You don't want him starting every game, though. He's a better special teams player than he is an every down safety. So I think that you need to start preparing for the future. So I think as far as the safety position, it's lacking a little bit. And the good thing is the conversation we're having right now about holes on the roster is so much better than it was 2 months ago. 2 months ago, it was like, man, they need a guard, they need a center, they need another guard, they probably still need a running back. Then there's the safety, then there's the defensive end depth. So they've done a lot of work, and there aren't any. I don't think there's any current like really glaring bad holes. Like they need somebody, and they need somebody now. Like if Braxton Jones is their starting left tackle this season, I'm okay with that. I think you need to start thinking bigger than that, because I think we've seen his ceiling, but they don't have any huge glaring holes at this point. Their biggest need, I think, is more depth pieces and maybe a starting running back.
Yeah, no, I agree with it completely what you're saying there, and I think you're right on Braxton Jones. For me as well, I'm not too worried about Braxton Jones going in there. When you look at the, injury permitting for the first time in a long time, I'm confident in saying I know for a fact 4 of those guys that are going to start in that line, and I'm confident in those guys. Now, look, they're new. We'll see if they gel together. It might take a few weeks. People shouldn't panic week 1, 2, or 3 if it doesn't look exactly right. We've a new coaching staff, and we've, as you say, 3 new guys in the interior of that line. But I still have confidence that over time it can do better. And I think Braxton Jones, with that experience beside him, I'd like to see if that can help him kind of take that kind of next step. So that's something I'm not too worried about so far going into the season. But you mentioned obviously the running back and Ashton Genty earlier on, and we'll kind of transition into the draft, which is the other big kind of conversation point at the moment, because there are the people who want Ashton Genty. There are the people who do not want a running back, think it's ridiculous to go for a running back so early. They want an offensive lineman. And, I think when you look at what the Bears have done, I think they have given themselves those options this offseason. But when you look at the number 10 pick and you look at kind of what's out there, what are you kind of hoping for them to do? Or what do you think the Bears, not that we all know what the Bears are doing, but given kind of past history, what do you think they're going to be looking at?
So here's what... it's so tough. I've gone back and forth on this a lot. And I think that I'll start with Genty, and I'll just get this out of the way. I am not going to be upset if they get to the 10th overall pick and Ashton Genty is there and they take Ashton Genty. Like, I will not come in to the Score the next day or get ready to take the North podcast that night and be upset. I think it would be, because I think that Ashton Genty is... The reality is, and we've talked about this on Take the North, when you're picking in the top 10 of the draft, you want to not look back on that pick with regret. And I don't think they would regret drafting Ashton Genty. That being said, I do understand the point of view is there's no way you should take a running back unless you're for sure this is like a generational talent. If it's Adrian Peterson, Christian McCaffrey, those kind of guys. And I don't know. I think Ashton Genty is going to be pretty good. I don't know if he's generational talent. I don't think he's Saquon Barkley good. And it's a lot of that is because even though his film is incredible, a lot of it is against inferior opponents, and he's not going to be bouncing off guys quite the same way as he was in college. I do think his contact balance is incredible. He's got great speed. He can work for you in the passing game. So I wouldn't hate that pick. Now, as far as what I want them to do, I would prefer take a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman. I don't think that a guy like Mason Graham out of Michigan is going to be there at 10. If he is, I think you go running up to the board and say, yeah, I want Mason Graham right now. There's no way that Abdul Carter is going to be there, unfortunately. Now, here's an idea. I'll throw this back at you. What do you think about the idea of them trading up to get somebody? And I'll throw this out to you as it was presented to me by one of my coworkers, Chris Emma, who covers the Bears for us here at the Score. He had heard that the Bears are toying with the idea of trading up, with the idea being there are about 8 blue chip players in this draft. So to get one of them, you need to be picking in the top 8. And so we don't know how far they would move up or who they would take, but what do you think about the idea of them trading up?
Yeah, look, because I've gone back and forth on every scenario in my head, and some weeks I want this, and other weeks I want that. I'm not against it. The player there, I think you need to trust, and obviously we talked about Ryan Poles and his record there. Ben Johnson as well is obviously going to have a big input into whatever decision is made. I think you just need to trust that if they see a player there that they think is one of those blue chippers and they think this guy can make this say, offense better, then look, I'm all for it. At the end of the day, it's a lottery. You've no idea who's going to do well or not. You could take someone in the 6th round who could go on to be a generational quarterback, or the 7th round. That happens. I just think you need to trust this coaching staff and this front office. If they see a player there that they feel makes this team better, then yeah, because that's what it is. It's just about getting better. And as we say, there is 6 to 8, as they say, blue chippers in this draft,
Mm-hmm.
and everything else is much of a muchness from 10 to 27. You're probably getting the same player. I mean, that might make it harder to actually trade back, if that's because people are saying just trade back. Well, if you want to trade back, why does another team want to move up if all these players are so interchangeable to an extent? So look, I think if you see a player that makes your team better, you don't want to get fleeced. You don't want to put the franchise at a disadvantage going forward in future drafts. But again, if the right player is there, I mean, some of the Bears players talked about it today in the press conferences. It's win now in their minds. This isn't a new coaching staff. You've got a bit of time to get it together and maybe lose and build. This is a retool and not a rebuilding. This is a team that want to win now. So yeah, if you find a player for me and you think he's going to make your team better and you can win, then look, I'm all for it, as long as he's exciting and it gets me up off my seat every Sunday.
Yeah, you see, I'm with you. Yeah, if they trade up, I think I would be. I don't know if I would love if they traded up to get Ashton Genty. I just feel like if that's a guy you let come to you at number 10, if they traded up and they got Mason Graham, or if they moved way up and they got Abdul Carter, hell yeah, absolutely. Now, real quick, there's one more name in the draft I want to get to, and we can move on. But Will Campbell is another guy that I know. I've seen a couple mocks of him getting to the Bears at number 10. I wouldn't be upset if they traded up to say 8 or so to get Will Campbell. And the reason I like him, I know there's concern about his arm length, right? Because his arm length
sorry, Adam, it's okay. They're still growing apparently. By the time the season comes, they'll be way up there.
Yeah, he's a young guy, Yeah, like some people grow into their early 20s. Just give it time. But seriously, I know that Ben Johnson said a week or two ago. I think it was actually at the combine when he was asked about, I think specifically about Will Campbell's arm length. What Ben Johnson said is he looks at the film first, and the film right now says he's a tackle. And the saying that I've heard is, look, he's a tackle until he's not. Now, what I would like about the Will Campbell pick is, okay, let's say you draft him, you put him in a competition at left tackle with Braxton Jones. And okay, let's say you find out during that competition, you know what? The arm length just isn't doing it. Let's kick him inside the guard. I am 100% confident he would be a good guard. And I have no doubt in my mind that Will Campbell would be a good, above average, maybe even great NFL guard. Now that puts less pressure on you to have to extend, say, Joe Thuney. And now you have Will Campbell that gets to learn from a future Hall of Famer for a year. And, it would be a little, I know that people want to see a top 10 pick play right away, but if he sits for a year, basically, get some playing time here and there, maybe due to injury, and then comes out and immediately is a top 10 guard in the NFL in year 2, I'm fine with that. And then obviously you still have a hole to fill at left tackle in that specific scenario. But I like the idea of that. And or maybe he beats out Braxton Jones at left tackle, and now you got your offensive line set. Braxton Jones becomes your swing tackle, which I think is a really good spot for him. So I think that scenario can end up being win-win in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it is a very interesting scenario. I don't know why. I have a feeling he is going to end up being there for the Bears, so it's going to be interesting to see if they then pull the trigger. But as you mentioned earlier, when it comes to your offensive line, the 5 who start in week 1 are very rarely the 5 who are playing, in the last week of the season, and there's going to be chopping and changing in between with injury. So even if he does come in, he is going to get playing time. So yeah, look, it's interesting. I mean, I think the Bears are in it's kind of an unusual situation because, as we said, we talked about it, a lot of the players outside of those 6 or 7 kind of blue chippers, I'd say, are all kind of considered similar-ish. So it's hard to know, do you stick or twist? Can you go forward? Can you drop back? Or do you just take the best player available, which you've kind of set yourself up for with the off season so far. So look, it's the draft. It'll be interesting, and yeah, we'll see how it all pans out. And the last thing I just want to touch, Adam, is we mentioned earlier today's press conferences. Obviously, we had Jalen Johnson, Tremaine Edmonds, who else? Darnell Wright, and obviously the quarterback Caleb Williams. We're talking. I mean, watching the guys talking and listening to them, is there anything that really stood out to you from any of them? Because look, they're 2 days back in. There's not a whole huge amount going on. Obviously, you get the question of what do you think of the new head coach? Kind of other than that, is there anything we can really take from today's press conferences?
I think just a couple things that stood out. There wasn't much that stood out from Caleb. I thought that Caleb was pretty straightforward today. And, the reality is we've heard from Caleb, but we hadn't heard from Jalen Johnson yet since the season ended, really. I think he did like an interview or two here and there with national media, but for the most part, we haven't really heard from him. And I thought he was really good just when he was talking about, when they asked him about, hey, like, how excited are you for, new coach Ben Johnson? He's basically like, look, man, until we start winning, that's all the same to me. Like, because we forget Jalen's been here, and he was drafted in 2020. He's been through a lot in his first 4 or 5 years in the pros. Like, you forget. And now Jalen didn't play in this game, but he was technically on a playoff team his rookie year. And you forget about that because of everything that happened in the 2020 season, which, obviously you had COVID that year, and the Bears started great and they fell apart, but he's been through a lot. And I think that we were doing the math on this today. I think that Dennis Allen is going to be his 6th defensive coordinator, if you include Matt Eberflus as one of them. That's 6 defensive coordinators in 5 years. I mean, so he has been through a lot, and he has been through a lot of losing, not because of his own play. And I know he's been frustrated by that aspect of just, look, he's just saying, this is all the same to me until we start winning. Like, I'm not buying into the hype until it's November and we're playing for a playoff spot. I'm not going to get overly excited. I'm just going to come out here and do my work. I thought that was really interesting and really good by Jalen. And then the other thing was, as you touched on earlier, Tremaine Edmonds talking about them being in win now mode, which I love hearing. And it's just plays into the idea that everything that they've been doing so far this offseason has been with the goal of winning now. And it also plays into what Jalen was talking about. This team wants to win now. They're sick of losing. They thought they were going to start winning last year, and they want to get this losing BS behind them. And now they still got a lot of work to do that. But this team does believe, maybe you wouldn't get Jalen to say this into a mic, but they do believe that they're capable of winning a lot of games sooner rather than later. And we, coincidingly, should expect them to win games. We should hold them to a higher standard of, I don't know if they win the division this year, but hey, get a wild card spot. That number 3 wild card spot is pretty reachable. If you win 10 games, you're probably going to get into the playoffs. So I think we can hold them to that higher standard. So that's kind of the only 2 things I really took away from today.
Yeah, and again, similar for me. I mean, he was the one that kind of stood out to me when he was talking about, Jalen Johnson was the one that stood out to me when he was talking about, as you said there, no, I've been through this before. When we start winning, I'll get excited. And that's exactly it. And that's what you want. I'll need to take a few tips from him, because I say that was my plan going into the off season until they made some moves. And then suddenly I thought, we're back.
Yeah. No, that was, I had the same thing. Yeah. I remember telling some of my coworkers around here, I was just, I'm not buying into this anymore. Like, I'm just, I'm going to temper my expectations, and I'll let the winning come to me. And then they hired Ben Johnson. It's like, I'm back. Let's go. 10 wins or bust.
Look, if you can't get excited, what's the point? So, I mean, why not? I mean, they seem to be making some interesting moves, which, they could bust, or they could go into the season and look really good. And it'll be a tough division, so it's not going to be easy for them. But I do still think they have the right structure there. I think they have the right, they need a bit of backups brought in there. They need to pad it out a bit, but I think they do have a good starting team there that can win a lot of games. So it's just going to be interesting to see now if they can step up and actually do it. But look, Adam, really appreciate you taking the time to jump on. If you want to let the guys know where they can find you, if anything they should keep an eye out for going forward.
Yeah, so you can follow or subscribe to or listen to Take the North on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. Just look for Take the North. And if you should see fit, listen to the show I produce on 670 The Score in Chicago. You can also find that on the Odyssey app. It's on from 10 to 2 every day. We have a rewind button that lets you listen to the show at any point in the last 24 hours, or there's podcasts for that. So yeah, that's where you can find either of those, and appreciate you having me on, Noel.
Oh no, not at all. Look, I'd love to have you back on. Obviously, going toward the season and during the season, and we'll see if any of the things we kind of guessed today turn out to actually happen. And look, thanks to everyone for watching and listening. Please do like and subscribe. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more content coming out up to the draft and onto the season. Until then.